Hello, BookTube. I do indeed have mail for you today, even though it's a Sunday. Absolutely beautiful Sunday, gorgeous. One of those early summer days that really are perfection. The morning is nice and cool. The day, the midday, the middle 3 or 4 hours of the day are warm but not hot. So if you're just sitting around reading or snoozing, you can barely make out the bean in the light there, but she is snoozing there in the sunlight, then you're just fine. You're nice and warm and comfortable. Not even a thought of a window fan, not even a thought of AC, nothing like that. It's only if you're out and about and moving around that you will get hot. And the nights cool off right away and are lovely. I shouldn't say right away. I don't know about your building, I don't know about where you live, but this particular Hyde Cottage has a real reflux problem, real bad. That kind of reflective heating where a surface or a structure heats up all day long, and then once the imbalance starts to occur and the air outside is cooler, it radiates that stored up heat. And Hyde Cottage does that like crazy, like crazy. That particular moment in the gloaming at the end of the day when the sun has broken, it's not down yet, but it's broken, it's not holding on anymore. That is when the heat will go up here at Hyde Cottage before it goes off completely, before it goes down completely. But an absolutely gorgeous day. And there was mail. Now, there's not actual mail. All of this was delivered yesterday, just really late, so I missed it, and I found it neatly assembled by my surly houseboy. But one thing was delivered today, and that was the New York Times. The Sunday New York Times comes here as a physical delivery every day. And I take an hour to read through it from stem to stern, and I always find something of interest, plenty of things that annoy me, also something to write about. I usually end up writing about the Sunday New York Times book review on my revived book blog, Steve Reads, which a number of you have done me the extreme compliment of going and signing up for. That's the perfect place for that sort of thing. I feel more comfortable writing about a book review than I do talking to you about one. And obviously no venue is going to want that. No venue would, that is a purely blog type thing. It's not even something that I could put on Open Letters Review. It's just a periodical that I'd be talking about. But for Steve Reads, it's perfect. The last 10 things I've done for Steve Reads, I couldn't do anywhere else, and it's felt wonderful to have that muscle back. That has felt wonderful. And the New York Times often does annoy me. Often. The front section of the paper, the news section, the most important patch of real estate anywhere in the world of journalism, unfortunately, it's still true, it's unfortunate, but it's true, that it's the most important piece of real estate anywhere in the journalistic world of the old school print newspaper world. And it's supremely annoying. The whole paper is supremely annoying about how the fact that Joe Biden's primary rival in the upcoming presidential election was just found guilty of 34 felonies, how that might hurt Biden. That's probably bad news for Biden. How it might be able to stumble through a debate with this guy. The whole of it is obvious. I have been proclaiming what this is for over a year. This is the Times and other news organizations trying to curry favor with what's coming. Trying to soften the blow of the retribution of what's coming. And that's not possible. What's coming hates them. Implacably hates them. So there is no softening that blow. All you're doing now is facilitating that blow. So it's extremely annoying, but I found something I haven't really dug into the nuts and bolts of the book review. That will probably annoy me more than anything else, because at the end of the day, I am thoroughly a book person, so that's probably going to annoy me more than anything else. Something in there will. But I found something in the New York Times Magazine that plenty annoyed me. Plenty. Because the Times doing wretched both sidesism about an ordinary old politician and a fascist who wants to take over the country and staff it with red shirts, that with red hats and Trump cult sycophants. There's no both sidesing that. there's no both sidesing that at all. You will not find a saner voice in American discourse anywhere than the great documentarian Ken Burns. And he himself said, there is no choice here. Why are we even talking about the merits of either side? There's no choice here. One of the two people in this race, if you want to call it a race, has said that he intends to eradicate the Constitution and rule as a dictator. indemnifying police in your town to make that happen. What are we doing? Saying, well, but what about his policy on Argentina? uh, it's one thing to get irritated about subjects like that, where everybody in one way or another is irritated about subjects like that, and they are, except for political wonks, one step removed from reality. In very little time they won't be, but they are right now. It's quite a different thing when an author irritates me on a subject that means a lot to me. That's why I think that I will probably get most regularly irritated at the book review. But the Times did it this time in a different section in the magazine on a different subject. The author is Sam Anderson, and it's on the cover of New York Times Magazine. Sam Anderson writes an article. I don't know that I should call it an article because it's really a cartoon. It's illustrated instead of written in prose. It's about 500 words of prose altogether about his dog. His Mango, his daughter's hamster, escapes from the hamster cage and falls into a hole in the floor. And they assume that the hamster is dead. But the family dog, a little long-haired miniature schnauzer named Walnut, insists that something is alive in the wall of the house. Not necessarily in the floor where the hamster fell, but in the wall. And won't leave it alone. And the stupid humans in the house, not putting two and two together in the way that I would think literally anyone would, wait a long time before they realize, oh, maybe that's the hamster. Maybe it fell down that hole and moved through part of the wall and is stuck. Or is afraid. Disoriented. And they leave out a treat, and sure enough, the hamster does appear, and the dog has saved the hamster's life. And Sam Anderson goes on about, he is going to maunder about pets and mortality. That is just a fate that is coming for you. That is the bullet that's headed straight for your head. There's nothing you can do about it. Authors will do this. That's all they will do. They will do this. And the sole question will be, why are they doing it? And maybe how are they doing it? Ordinarily, it's a subject that means a lot to me. The subject of pets and mortality means a lot to me. I have had a lot of dogs. I have seen them all off at enormous cost to myself sometimes in terms of pain and suffering and long-term just wearing down. It's taken some of my dogs a long time to die. The key realization in that moment is that you must not fail. You simply must not fail. I know that the trite line, failure is not an option, was a mantra in the late 90s. And I know that in the 21st century, failure is my birthright is the slogan of the blue-haired crowd on Twitter. But nevertheless, in neither case, you must not fail in that final responsibility. You must not do it. And I never have, but it's been hard, really hard. So I love it when this subject is written about well, as I've seen it sometimes written about well. And I especially hate it when it's written about poorly. Sam Anderson at first seems like, despite the stupid cartoons, what am I, 8? Despite the stupid cartoons, it seems like he's going to write about it well, because he writes about an earlier dog, Moby, the best dog he's ever had. And he says, after Moby quickly and unexpectedly dies, he writes, "That first night in bed I reached out for him, just pure muscle memory, and there was nothing there, and I broke down sobbing. I cried for days. At one point I found myself petting a photograph of his face." Now, pure muscle memory is sleepwalking. That is just Sam Anderson sleepwalking, but the rest of it is pretty good. Until he goes on and writes a passage that toweringly annoyed me. You would think in an anodyne little piece like this, there'd be nothing that would annoy me, but it does. Because this is a serious thing. Unless it's not. Unless it's a cartoon for you, and you're lying, then it's a serious thing. It doesn't get any more serious. So he writes this about Moby's death. "It took me by surprise. I was young and soft and naive. I just assumed we had years left together. Now I'm old and grizzled. I expect nothing. I have experienced other losses. A few years ago, my father got a terrible illness and died. Another departure I wasn't ready for and still can't quite speak about." You're writing an article in the New York Times Magazine. My own children, meanwhile, are practically full grown, and lately I find myself thinking a lot about the fact that everything ends. So every morning as I drink my coffee, I run my fingers through Walnut's luscious fur and think about the fact that he will die. There's a stupid lie in that writing, and stupid lies are the birthright of writers, of course. I wouldn't expect to find anything anywhere, not just in the New York Times, but anywhere, that didn't have at least one stupid lie in it. But there are stupid lies and there are stupid lies. And when Sam Anderson writes, "Now I'm old and grizzled and I expect nothing," I felt my heart just start racing. Because that means this whole thing is kabuki theater. Sam Anderson is almost, and by almost I mean a matter of months, 40 years younger than I am. He's not old and grizzled, and he knows it. All he wants when he says a preposterous phrase like that is for you to contradict him. It's obviously just a holdover from stupid, annoying conversation. It's a stupid, annoying conversational gambit. I'm old and grizzled now, so that the room will say on cue, or their annuities are cut off, no, you're not. If he's going to say a lie like that, then that means he hasn't learned any of the things that he's writing that he has learned, and isn't thinking, therefore, about any things he says he's thinking. The people, the stupid hamster, the dogs, they're all props. They're all props in a stupid, ego-stroking essay on the last subject in the world that should provoke one. See? I'm all worked up. This is not a subject that you bloviate about. I guess if you're a writer, you can bloviate about any subject that you want, but oh my, does it drive me crazy when authors do it on this subject. This subject has dragged me through the darkest parts of my entire life. I've come out the other end of them, and I've had joy at the other end of them. But I would never trivialize them in this way. Just never. All right. Okay. All right, so that was the periodicals, New York Times. I don't know if I will continue my New York Times, my Sunday New York Times subscription. David Murphy, when he was last here, set me up with it for home delivery, and it had a few bumps, but then the home delivery started happening without a hitch. So it's not the home delivery problem. It's not the home delivery that would be the problem. It's the Times itself. I'm starting to wonder if maybe the next time David Murphy comes over, we could check my subscription status for the New York Times. He told me when he was here, maybe some of you can confirm this, that when you get a special deal for Sunday-only print newspaper, they let you know well ahead of time when your subscription is about to end, and you're going to be charged the full rate. They don't spring that on you. And that hasn't happened yet. I haven't received any email like that yet. So I'm thinking now maybe, I very much like getting a Sunday paper in the mail. I don't know why, but I very much do. So naturally I'm thinking, well, okay, what if we cancel my Sunday subscription to the Times and start a Sunday subscription to the Post? What about that? Would that work? Do they even deliver to Boston, the Sunday Post? I think the Washington Post? I think they do. I'll check into it. Certainly the Times is annoying for its whataboutism and its fascism facilitation. But for some odd reason, even though it's far more trivial in the long run, that really annoyed me. I'm old and grizzled now. I expect nothing. Just from a young author. Just ridiculous. Anyway, let's move on to the mail, because we do have mail. We don't just have tirades. We have mail as well. So let's see what we have here. What is this? Okay, looks like somebody sent me this directly from Amazon. You get the little notes from Amazon. I wonder if one of them will explain what this is. Thank you for replying to my message to open letters. Okay. All right. Oh, great. It's an indie published book. Okay, fantastic. The little note goes on. If you need any info about the book or the author, please email me at. Trust me, I can take it from here. Let's look at the book. Oh, this is nice. This is nicely done. Oh, very good. Okay, this is a novel. It's by Natasha Rendell, and it's called Imagining Jesus. How is that for a cover? Of course, we know Jesus didn't look like that. We know exactly what he did look like, or what he would have. I don't think that Jesus historically existed. But if he did, he would have looked exactly like the people that look in the area now, where people live now and have lived since he was there. He wouldn't look any different. He wouldn't look like a white Anglo-Saxon country music star. But we'll allow a little liberty on the cover, because if you put a picture on the cover of what he actually what a character in first century Judea looked like, unless you start subscribing to Robert Graves type crackpot theories about how Jesus had a Greek father instead of a Jew as a father, unless you start subscribing to adding on weird mythology onto weird mythology like that, then Jesus certainly didn't look like this. But let's see. A saga of passion, love, and completion of a life fully lived. An old man begins to tell the story of his amazing life. Villagers, grandchildren listen, entranced by the man's eloquence and wise countenance. The listeners are transported to a faraway land, and the story begins with the birth of a child. The greatest story ever told breathes light, love, and compassion into every chapter of his fulfilling and traumatic life. Ooh, who's the old man? Ages have passed since he walked in flesh. Natasha's imagination reveals a human man and his incredible powers. Yet you and I always travel with him on every adventure. Oh, that sounds good. Let's see here. Oh, wait, the author wrote an earlier book called Imagining Nefertiti. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, so this might not be a specifically Christian book. It might not be a religious book. So this came out in 2023. I don't see a price on it. The indie books often don't have that. Let's flip. This is an indie book. This looks really good. Let's flip ahead. Let's read the beginning of chapter 8. Yosef found the first few days of travel exhausting. For although he was fit and healthy, he was unused to walking great distances in a single day. Thus it took all his energy to plod on beside the pack horses. At eventide, after ensuring the animals were settled for the night, and when everyone had eaten, Yosef would collapse onto his bedroll. The other men good-naturedly made jests about the young man's aching muscles and feet, but gradually he found a greater strength and more energy, and by week's end, Yosef could keep up with the best of them. The men were amiable and worked together in harmony. If anyone had taken care of their allotted task before the others, a hand was willingly lent. Moreover, Yosef had already proven invaluable with his ministrations of the animals, and could ease any pain or inflammation from an injury with his mother's ointments and other remedies. And now he was not so much in an exhausted state, he could fully appreciate his surroundings. When they made camp in the evening, the men often sang an accompaniment to the lyre played by one of them. Other times they talked long into the night about their lives and experiences. At first, Yosef was unusually quiet and would listen without saying a word, but eventually he was coaxed into talking about his life thus far. The men were intrigued to hear of his time living in Alexandria, for not one of them had ventured that far south, and before long, Yosef found he had enthralled audience. Indeed, he had a way of speaking that enticed his listeners. Okay, that's pretty good. Shall we jump way ahead? I'm assuming that's Joseph from the biblical story. Let's go to the beginning of chapter 29. An exceptional girl child had been born in Jerusalem the same year Joseph and Miriam, okay, so it's Joseph and Mary, returned with their family to Beersheba. Her proud parents named her Magdalena, welcomed her into a family with heartfelt love. Oh my, this is the babyhood of Mary Magdalene. So is this part one of a long series? I guess I could flip to the end. You'll know by the ending whether or not it is. Okay, well, fantastic. I actually don't remember this particular email, but that doesn't mean I didn't get it. That doesn't mean that it isn't true. I'm sure that it is. I get a lot of emails, although I get far fewer emails from indie authors wanting exactly this than you would think that I would get. I have a healthy channel, an active viewership, and I love indie books. I'm not dismissive of them at all. You would think I would get more of these. You think that every indie author in the world would say, well, if you're going to open your mail live and you've got an audience for you opening mail and you're going to talk about it, well, then absolutely, I'll send you my book. But they don't. Virtually any of them do. This sounds good. And that was a good, solid prose line that we read at the beginning, at chapter 3. So imagining Jesus, that's a surprise. All right. Then we'll move on. Let's see here. We have no more packages, just 2 boxes. Oh god, I've got another one of these boxes that requires that I destroy it completely in order to get at its contents. Now, the last time we did that was a David Hone book about dinosaur behavior, and I forgot to leave a link to any YouTube videos by David Hone. I really should. Let's see what this one is. Oh my, okay, this is also by Princeton University Press. This is also another work of popular natural history. This is by Susanna Monso, and it is called Playing Possum, How Animals Understand Death. How amazing! How amazing! Okay, well, I don't have a sheet for this. Let's just read the description here. When the opossum feels threatened, she becomes paralyzed. Her body temperature plummets, her breathing and heart rate drop to a minimum, and her glands stimulate the smell of a putrefying corpse. Just for the record, male possums do that too. This book explores what the opossum and other creatures can teach us about how we and other species understand mortality, and demonstrates that the concept of death, far from being a uniquely human attribute, is widespread in the animal kingdom. With humor and empathy, Susanna Monso tells the stories of ants who attend their own funerals, chimpanzees who clean the teeth of their dead, dogs who snack on their caregivers, crows who avoid the places where they saw a carcass, elephants obsessed with collecting ivory, and whales who carry their dead for weeks. Monso, one of today's leading experts on animal cognition and ethics, shows how there are more ways to conceive of mortality than the human way, and challenges the notion that the only emotional reaction to death worthy of our attention are ones that resemble our own. Ooh, wonderful. Wonderful. I'm hoping that the book description is different from the book's content. It usually is. I'm hoping that we're not told in chapter 15 of this book that all death is to be mourned except the death of men. So who is blending philosophical insight with new evidence from behavioral science and comparative psychology? This book dispels the anthropocentric biases that cloud our understanding of the natural world and reveals that when it comes to death and dying, we are just another animal. Okay, all right. Okay, yes, true. When it comes to death and dying, we're just another animal. But we're not talking about death and dying here. We already know that possums die. We already know that animals die. We're talking about how animals think of death. And that's not a question of your mortality. That's a question of your mentality. That's a question of your brain. And the parts of the human brain that can think conceptually, that can take a phenomenon and implant it on themselves, that can imagine themselves into a scenario, the parts of the human brain that can do that better than the parts of any animal on Earth, and also any artificial intelligence that's ever been created. The parts of the human brain that can do that to a degree and to an extent that's just staggering, just absolutely staggering. So saying that we're just another animal, fine, but literally no other animal species on Earth that we know of has anywhere like our ability to transpose ourselves into a hypothetical situation. And for everyone, every animal of every species anywhere in the world, death is necessarily a hypothetical situation. So there is a difference there. You know perfectly well, if you watch this channel, you know perfectly well that I laugh at the idea of human exceptionism. But in this particular case, yes, we are animals and we live and die. We experience death and dying, but we think about it in ways that are different than other animals do. Possums, for instance, evolved this behavior and these physiological traits because they know that they leave rotting meat alone. They know that foragers of live meat will leave rotting meat alone, or give it a wider berth, give it a chance to escape. There's all sorts of little avenues like that. That means they understand food. It doesn't mean they understand that they will cease to exist. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to hear what the author has to say on the subject, definitely. And then we've got this second box here. It is taped up like Fort Knox. Remember, kids? Always have scissors nearby. Scissors are very useful, and when you want them, they won't be there. Always make sure you have scissors nearby, but always make sure that when you are done with the task you needed the scissors for, you reach over and put them all the way back where they belong. Don't just drop them next to you. Don't put them down on the table or the coffee table. Don't do that. Reach over and put them all the way back where they belong. Always put your stuff where it belongs. Always do that. Might as well develop the habit now while you're young, because when you're older, it's going to come in handy. Really handy. This also applies, for instance, later on when you have the keys to the house. It will really apply then. You're going to want to know where your stuff is. So let's see what this last thing. It's a finished copy of some kind. Oh, look at that. Okay. All right, look at your face on a warm summer day. Okay, we've already seen this. Great. This comes out in late June. This is the finished copy of the new biography of the poet Tom Gunn. A Cool, Queer Life. I don't know how well you're going to be able to make out the cover, but the cover shows our subject, as an older man, being photographed by a handsome younger man, which makes it a great choice for a cover of a book. So we'll just read this again. We'll act on the assumption that you don't remember the advanced copy, and we'll read this again. Although this now has blurbs, one from Clive Wilmer and one from August Kleinzahler. Okay. And it also has an advanced starred. It got a starred review from Booklist, and also a very good review from Publishers Weekly. No sign whether or not Kirkus has weighed in. The publication of Tom Gunn's letters in 2022 led to something of a Gunn renaissance. Unfortunately, no, it didn't, but publicists have to write that way. But I showed you the letter collection, which I got and have been living in anticipation of the finished copy of this thing. I've been living in it. Now, Michael Knott, one of the editors of the collected letters, has written a biography that puts the letters and poems into the context of Gunn's life, as well as offering the story of that life at once exemplary and emblematic. Throughout his life, Gunn's image was ever shifting, or at least bifurcated between the shores of the Atlantic. In Britain, for much of his career, Gunn was identified with the movement poets, that plain-spoken group of formal poets prominent in the 50s and beyond, that included Philip Larkin and others. This was where Gunn made his name, and the Gunn of those first few collections, interested in the pose, leather jackets, and Elvis, stylistically formal, semi-Elizabethan. I got your cod piece right here. Enigmatically impersonal, predominated the British understanding of his work. But there was also the American Gunn, the Gunn who settled in the Bay Area, studied with Ivor Winters, and came to appreciate the baggier, modernist, and Black Mountain poets who would influence the San Francisco Renaissance. It was also in America that Gunn would take part in the burgeoning counterculture and queer scenes, especially those of the West Coast. Here, Gunn would write his most famous book, The Man with Night Sweats, a response to the AIDS crisis, part elegy and part meditation. Okay, well, this is the pitter-patter of little feet. This is a gigantic biography. This is what, 800 pages? I almost don't want to turn to the back to look for the final page count, because that is going to tempt me to see whether or not this has a bibliography, as books never do. All right, this one does. Thank God, this one does. 700. This is 700 pages long, and obviously here at the doorstep of summer, heading into the dog days of summer. I mean, I think the dog days are going to extend all summer long in America. I think it's going to be brutally hot, although it's not so far, and no brutal heat is in the immediate forecast for New England. Even so, I don't think we're going to be spared. But in those months, you're not going to get doorstop biographies. You're not going to get as many of them as you're going to get in the fall. So this is just the beginning. The year will have 6 or 7 mainstream doorstop biographies. It always does. And this is one of the first ones. We got that biography of Zhao Enlai that I still have not reviewed. I thought it was austerely wonderful, but I still haven't reviewed it. It was pretty big. It wasn't this big. Okay, so this comes out in the 3rd week of June. Just 2 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now. Fantastic. All right, so I have a finished copy of it. Great. Great. I've worked up the advanced copy quite a bit, but I want this, definitely. So there you go. That was the mail. We have Tom Gunn, A Cool Queer Life. Would have paid good money to avoid that subtitle. Then Playing Possum, a book about animals and non-human animals and death, and imagining Jesus. An indie novel. How wonderful. The type of indie novel I used to get all the time. Fantastic. Plus a piece in New York Magazine by old grizzled Sam Anderson. So anyway, that's the Bean and I. That's it for our Sunday mail. Who knew there'd be Sunday mail? There'll certainly be mail tomorrow. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.